Hello, I'd like to introduce ourselves. We're Alan and Susan Stoller. At the time of our missionary fields experience, we were 59 and 57 years old. And we had 3 married sons, their wives, and 7 very young grandchildren in our family. Prior to leaving, I had been a dentist for 33 years and also a lay pastor in our church for 20 years.
In 2008, we attended a perspectives class and felt a real spiritual prompting to perhaps consider selling everything and becoming missionaries to Ethiopia. Don't get me wrong, this was a 2 to 3 year process.
Yeah, and what we experienced was a deep Holy Spirit calling, not just a quest for a spiritual adventure. We felt this mutually in our hearts. It wasn't one leading or coercing the other into going. It was a mutual experience. And along the way, there were many signs and affirmations from the Holy Spirit that we were truly searching out God's will to live in our lives.
Background, I had homeschooled our 3 boys, so maybe that prepared me, Alan too, but me for thinking outside of the box. Needless to say, this calling was a complete direction change for our lives. We went to serve single mothers trapped in prostitution in order to feed their children. These precious women had little or no education, no social safety net, and most had no family support. They were stuck in prostitution because in their country there was no opportunity.
We lived in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia for 3.5 years, and during those years we witnessed a growing Ethiopian government opposition to what we were doing. With constant operational regulation changes, we were essentially forced to come back home to America.
So in considering counseling needs, I would say aloneness and isolation from family was at the top. We would Skype our families back in America, see our kids, grandkids, sometimes extended family members, and for the next 2 or 3 days we were in the pits. I mean, very depressed. Alan one time equated it to going to a smorgasbord and not allowed to eat. So another thing was when you live there, as opposed to maybe going for 2 weeks, but when you live there, it's daily. You see this overwhelming need in the developing countries. You see that the needs aren't met, and there are so many poor people. And when you compare that to, oh, did we have success? It's like, how do you have success when there's no end? And Jesus said, the poor you'll have with you always. I still have flashbacks when I am approached by a beggar or a poor person on the street. I don't know what to do with that. Even to this day, it takes me back to Ethiopia.
In our pre-missionary training, we were taught that different is not bad. Different is just different. But when we got there, the cultural realities were just so shockingly different than what we had grown up in. And nothing can prepare you for that kind of a change. And there is a psychological effect to that kind of a change. Probably lastly, in our returning home experience, Susan and I both experienced what we would call survivor's guilt. We left behind loved ones that we worked with and for, who we had grown to love, and we were returning to America, the land of prosperity and possibilities and opportunities, and we were leaving behind the people that we really cared for. And we knew that they were going to have what they had when we left. So the other reentry thing was what I would call reentry isolation, where we came back to people who were friends before we left, and they didn't know what to say. They didn't know what questions to ask. So they said nothing and they asked nothing. And that just left us in an empty spot all alone. And that was a difficulty as well.
So, in closing, on a positive note, we did experience tremendous spiritual growth and definite refining during our 3 years in Ethiopia. But we can affirm that there is a substantial need for counseling before you go, which Alan and I did have. Plus, we felt many, many times that there was a need while we were on mission there in the cross-cultural ministry years. And as you've just heard, when you return, there is a definite need.
In this last testimony, you've heard a story from a couple who went through a very difficult time trying to adjust both while on the field and then coming off. I think that their stories are sadly quite common in the people that we've worked with. It is not uncommon for people to end up finding themselves without the necessary support to thrive in their environment. And then, even when returning back to their home country, still feel out of sync, out of touch, and have a hard time trying to figure out how they fit back in. On both sides of this, it's incredibly difficult. And our organization does try to provide the care that would make a significant difference for these people. So to that end, if you would be open to helping support us make this difference, we would ask that you would do so. Safe Haven is intended to help bringing the best pastoral and clinical counseling we can so that the people who are out there doing this very challenging work can thrive. Thank you.